After using the Xiaomi Mi 11 for about a month now, I would like to share with you my advanced review. I hope you enjoy and learn something. I love the design of the Xiaomi Mi 11. It's thin, it has the curved edges, but not too much, so you do not have that many or none at all unintentional touches to the screen. It is a thin design, it's very thin actually, but it's not as thin as my previous phone, the Galaxy S7 Edge, but still it's one of the thinnest phones around in these latest generations. The metallic frame feels very high-end, the curved glass is Gorilla Glass both in the front and in the back. It feels very high-end, very rigid, yet very slippery also, so be careful, especially in the first few weeks that you use it, because it can easily flip out of your hands. The size of the phone isn't extreme if you would ask me, because when I compare it to my previous phone, the Galaxy S7, which wasn't the biggest phone around even back then, this phone actually is only a little bit longer. It's about 1.4 centimeters longer, but all the other dimensions remain virtually the same. So I get about 1.3 inches of additional screen real estate compared to my S7 Edge, but that's all because of the less borders, the less bezels to the screen. Sadly, that's one small detail that I do not really like about this phone, are the corners of the screen. They're a bit over rounded if you would ask me. They don't really fit the corners that great. At first I thought that would really bother me, but after using it even for half an hour already, I immediately forgotten about that whole thing. So let's talk about that glorious screen now. Of course, the first thing I did after I booted the device for the very first time was enable the maximum resolution, the 3200 by 1440p, and that glorious 120 Hz mode, and oh my god, it has been such a crisp, butter smooth experience. And don't worry, it doesn't really impact the battery life as much as they want to make you believe with all the other reviews. I genuinely can say that so far so good. I mean, I've had screen on times of 4 hours and reach about 60% of my battery life, so I am very happy with those results. But personally, I always enable dark mode, and I use a little less than 50% brightness. You know, it's more comfortable for the eyes and it prevents the burn-in on the OLED. And of course the MIUI software, it works great with dark mode as everything looks well adjusted. But beware of the additional dark mode settings. At some point I noticed that the phone made some websites or images, even my wallpaper, a bit too dark. First I thought it was just poor calibration, but it appeared to be an extra setting in dark mode, which automatically adjusts the background. So I switched this option off as I experienced it as being annoying and giving me some unrealistic imagery. Technically speaking, there's no real reason to dim the screen even further from very dark gray to full black, as doing so will only save you just 0.3% of extra battery life. And then there's also an option to just dim the text a bit, but I left it on as it makes reading a little bit more pleasant. Speaking of calibration, I suggest you put the color scheme in display settings to original colors if you want the most accurate colors and the best possible image quality. There's also an auto and saturated mode, but I actually noticed the oversaturation in a few movies or photographs, which shouldn't happen. So how can we get the very best possible video quality out of this phone? Well, when it comes to video, there are a few AI enhancements. You can either enable super resolution or you can enable MEMC, which is a kind of interpolation which makes the video smoother, but you can't enable both. I've only enabled the MEMC, so the interpolation so far. There's also an HDR enhancer, which I left disabled because I prefer movies as the director intended them. Finally, there's an AI image enhancer, but this only works in the gallery. And I also left this off because, you know, I want to see my photos the way they really are and the way they will show up on computer screens or televisions and not just on my phone. So I prefer the more natural look. You can manage your video apps in the settings. this will allow you to select the apps where the videos will be enhanced or not. The last thing that I would like to point out is full screen apps. By default, the system doesn't let you use the entire screen. For some crazy reason, Xiaomi thinks that the notch, you know, that tiny little dot on the top left of your screen, will bother users so much that we all rather just keep the whole area unused. But this gives you a strange, asymmetric, incomplete viewing sometimes when you watch movies full screen. Luckily, you can just enable all apps to allow full screen viewing, and then you do not have this problem anymore. Personally, I've never experienced the phone getting warm, let alone hot, but keep in mind, I'm just a casual gamer, and I don't think I've really pushed the phone to its limits yet. Now let's talk software. There's tons of features, but also bloatware and yes, even ads in the Xiaomi Mi 11 MIUI. There's a reason that Xiaomi phones come a little bit cheaper than their Samsung counterparts. Well, first of all, there's bloatware. Most of which is easy to install. However, there is some bloatware which can't be removed by default. Luckily, there's a relatively easy way to debloat any Xiaomi phone without resorting to root or unlocking your bootloader, which actually turns this into a plus for me, because I haven't seen a lot of phones where it's been so easy. Personally, I like to keep the original ROM intact to ensure that I get the proper updates and that some streaming or banking apps don't start to complain because I'm rooting the device. Sadly, there are some ads present, but I have to say two things about this. First of all, I've barely noticed any throughout the whole system, and I barely use any Xiaomi apps. And luckily, whenever you encounter an ad, you can just go to the settings and turn off ads in the specific application. Because it's Android, the system also works great with Blockada, which blocks almost all ads system-wide and will also protect your privacy, performance, battery life, and so forth. The phone is really feature-rich, and MIUI is definitely a step up from stock Android. However, the experience isn't as refined or as rich as, let's say, the Galaxy S21 would be. The default browser, the video player, the gallery, the music player, they're all just not as good as Samsung's versions. But feel free to install your own alternatives, of course. You can also see some very small software related issues exist. Like there's a small misalignment in the text in notifications. It's no big deal, it's just tiny things, and I really expect these things to get fixed in the future updates of MIUI. Finally, there's a little thing that has to come off my chest. Most Xiaomi phones, they lack MHL or video out over USB-C. This is something to easily overlook. Xiaomi Mi 11 is no exception to this. It could be a deal breaker if you like to connect your phone to your TV or monitor to enjoy movies or games or whatever on the big screen without lag or compression. You can still stream wirelessly, of course, but there's no actual HDMI-like connection on the phone. So you can't also enjoy a desktop mode like Samsung has in their DeX enabled phones. Who knows, they can still add this feature in future upgrades, but I wonder if it's possible without the hardware support of MHL. Perhaps video out can still work over a display link kind of USB-C dock with video out, but I haven't tested it. The results should be less qualitative than the actual HDMI connection because it's always compressed and might be a little bit more lagged. Using two apps at the same time on the Xiaomi Mi 11 is a delight. It has a really tall screen, so it's very nice to just stream some YouTube videos on the top and have a chat with friends on the bottom or just browse the web. Going to the split screen mode is a little bit less intuitive compared to Samsung's One UI, and there's no option, for example, to quickly flip the top screen with the bottom screen and vice versa. You can, however, also use floating windows. I've never really felt the use for this feature, but I am sure it can come in handy for you. You can enable the split screen or floating windows by just going to your task manager and then press long on an app. 4 options will appear. The first one is a little lock, which will force the phone to keep the app running in the background, so no battery saving or timeout system can kill the app in the background. The second is a split screen icon to open the app on the top, and next you can select a second app from the bottom, or just go back to the home screen and use your phone in the bottom. The third option is a floating window option, so if you tap it, the window, if it's supported, will open up above everything else. And the last one is a little settings symbol, which will take you to the app settings in Android. There are some additional highlights I would like to point out about this phone without going too deep into the detail. First of all is Android Auto. It just works great. I use it in a Nissan Leaf from the year 2018. It feels a lot more snappy than it ever felt with my Galaxy S7 Edge before. So it's a great phone to use with Android Auto. The fingerprint reader under the screen is also great. It works very fast, very smooth. Always. I've never had any hiccups whatsoever. Maybe a small tip that I can give is that if you always use the same finger to unlock your phone, scan that same finger twice in the settings of the fingerprint reader so that it has a double chance of picking up the right finger immediately. The third thing I would like to point out are the system navigation options. You can either have those typical Android buttons in the bottom of your screen, or you can choose to go for gesture-based navigation that you can just swipe to go back and swipe up to go to the task manager and things like that. I enjoy the navigation with gestures because I prefer a clean and minimal look to my phone. It hasn't been very easy to get used to these gestures since I'm coming from Android 7 with physical buttons actually. But now that I've gotten used to it, I really enjoy the minimalistic approach, and it's so smooth to go back and forward through your applications. This is also one of the reasons that I'm not using my favorite launcher anymore, which was Nova Launcher Prime, because it doesn't allow you to use those gesture-based navigations. So you must use the buttons with Nova Launcher. And that was a bit of a drawback for me, so I decided to go with the default launcher of Android. And I must say I really like it. It's so smooth, it's so beautiful, it's clean, it has a some very handy features like swipe up to go to your app drawer and swipe down anywhere in the screen to just go to your notifications and your quick settings, which was the same as I would configure my Nova launcher anyway. Another very cool thing about the Xiaomi Mi 11 is that you have these super wallpapers. They're really stunning. You only have 3 on the Xiaomi Mi 11, but they're very nice. I have to say it's so nice to use these. There's also a very nice feature in the live wallpapers, which I'm going to explain here, is that if you press the little plus in the bottom of the screen, you can add your own videos as your own wallpaper and they will loop in the background of your phone. It's such a simple feature, but it looks so good. It's really such a delight to see. Imagine you have a very nice cinematograph, or you can just have a really cool animation set in the background on an infinite loop, or have your family, whatever. It's really cool to have that as a wallpaper. There's also an infrared blaster on the phone, which works as expected. It's a nice little feature. I do not have that many devices left in my house which are remote controlled, but with my LG C9 OLED TV it works perfectly, so I can't complain about that. It's nice if you need it. Then I would like to discuss the default browser, music, video player on the Xiaomi Mi 11. They're not the best applications. I'm gonna be honest here. I don't use them, and that's okay. You know, Xiaomi gives it a shot. It's okay. You know, they try to convince me to use them, but I always have a very fine selection of my favorite apps that I always use, and it's gonna be very difficult to ever convince me to not use those anymore. For example, as a video player, I use VLC. On Android, it plays every possible video file that you throw at it. It also supports streaming videos from UPnP devices or directly from your NAS or something like that. And it has by far the best video quality for HDR. It has a very intuitive way to increase brightness or increase the volume or change the screen sizes of your video. The music player that I always use is Black Player, a paid version, but Black Player is my go-to music player, and it has It always has been and it always will be. It's so lightweight, it has so many features, and it's so customizable. It's just the perfect little music player for people like me who enjoy to tweak their music player to the maximum. Oh, and by the way, both BlackPlayer and VLC support Android Auto. The browser that I always use, you might find this a weird decision, is the Samsung browser. I've tried Edge, I've tried Chrome, I've tried many others like Firefox, Opera, you name it, but I always keep coming back to Samsung browser. It uses far less energy than Chrome or Edge, especially on older devices. It also has, if you would ask me, by far the best intelligent dark mode for every possible website. And it has a very comfortable reading mode. And on top of that, it supports single-handed use. It's just the perfect mobile browser altogether, if you would ask me. But coming back to the Xiaomi Mi 11, the phone is very rich in features. You know, I would like to point out that I've only just scratched the surface of all the features and functionality in MIUI. I know there's some innovative privacy tools as well. As far as I understood, the app lock will allow you to hide up to 8 apps, and the experimental second space is something really cool. It allows you to have an entirely different home screen or setup by logging in with a different pattern or a designated fingerprint. This seems like a great concept if you want to use your smartphone for private communication or manage bank transactions or stuff like that. And if someone wants to use your phone, you can just sign in a different kind of way, and they would have their draft home screen, you know. So it's a perfect way to deal with this. So let's talk games and emulation. Obviously the Snapdragon 888 performs excellent at pretty much any Android game you'll throw at it, because it is pretty much the most powerful chip available. But personally, I also enjoy the occasional emulation. I've tried some heavier PPSSPP, the PSP emulator, and Dolphin games, which allow you to play the Nintendo Wii, GameCube, and Nintendo 64 games. And I must say, everything is running excellent at double the resolution or more. I've been enjoying some Wipeout Pure, Wipeout Pulse, F-Zero GX, Luigi's Mansion, and it's been an absolute delight to play these games with a Bluetooth controller. Finally, I don't want to go too deep into this because it's a personal thing, and you know, there's been so many reviews about this already, but I want to quickly talk about the camera and the battery life of the Xiaomi Mi 11. I don't have enough experience to compare the camera with other high-end phones, but I can just say that I love the camera. It's very good, it's very high quality. The pictures of both the wide-angle lens and the main camera are damn near perfect. The portrait mode adds a great bokeh effect without artifacts. The night mode is insanely good. It feels that even in the darkest situation, like you're taking a photograph with a flash. It's very strange how they achieve this. The Pro mode is also great, but I find it a little bit more difficult to get the absolute perfect toned images compared to my Galaxy S7 Edge. I also love filming with this camera. Keep in mind that I have a bit of a shaky hand, and the extra stability features, in addition to the optical image stabilization, work great. It's really strange how hard you can shake the phone without noticing any kind of jittery motion or whatever. It's very good for a guy like me with a very unstable hand. Also, the 4K video shots in darker environments are still so crisp and so stable. Again, I have no idea how they achieved this, but it feels like you're shooting with a gimbal without losing too much image data due to cropping or anything like that. Consider me impressed. Last but not least, I really enjoy the macro lens. You know, many reviewers call it just a gimmick, something you'll never use, and maybe for your case that is the case, but personally it's been my favorite camera from the phone so far. I'm constantly coming up close to flowers or small detailed objects like electronics or Lego sets. It's so fun to see the little details, and it can come so close to these objects. It's mind-blowing. I've had a few macro cameras in the past, but this one really gets close. It's more than just a gimmick, if you would ask me. There are a few downsides to the camera system, if you would ask me. The whole interface is a little bit complex. It's not that easy to quickly navigate to the right kind of camera. It's not always very clear what certain objects, what the impact will be on your image. And there's a lack of optical zoom, which is just a bummer, but you notice when you buy it. But the 108 megapixel sensor does allow for some decent cropping, so don't feel too worried that you won't be able to zoom in on certain photos. Finally, the battery is hard to review because of the different use cases. I've heard many reviewers complain about the Mi 11's battery life, and every situation is unique. After using it for about a month now, with full resolution 120 Hz, me personally, I've experienced excellent battery life. I can easily last 2 days if I want to, easily. But keep in mind, I debloated my device and I use it in dark mode. I have Blockada set up, which prevents a lot of connectivity. I have only just a very few apps running in the background, and I rarely use maximum brightness, and disabled all the artificial intelligence image enhancements. Some examples, with very little use, starting from 9 AM in the morning until the late afternoon, sometimes I still have 90% left, so that's about 8 hours of on time. I can just do with 10%, which is great. I've had days with over 4 hours of screen on time, some browsing, video chatting, and still have 58% of the battery remaining at the end of the day. And I really don't feel like the battery drains heavy during heavy use. It feels like you can really play some emulation games or use the camera for a long time without noticing a heavy drop in battery life. So there you have it. I hope you learned from my experience and that now you know what you needed to know about the Xiaomi Mi 11 before deciding whether or not you want to go out and buy one. So if you have any questions left, feel free to leave this in the comments and I'll see if I can answer whatever I can. See you guys in the next one. Bye!